welcome to the Navarre Roundtable, where tonight's topic will be the subject of incorporation. As most of you know, there will be a straw vote coming up in the community of Navarre October the 12th. The purpose of the straw vote is for you, the citizens of the area, to tell me, your state representative, whether or not you would like me to begin considering the concept of incorporation for the Navarre area. Again, it's a simple straw vote to see if there's any local support for the initiative. Of course, the way these things work, the majority rules. So if we get a straw vote and you overwhelmingly tell me that you're not interested in incorporation, the issue dies then and there. If you tell me that you are interested in incorporation, then obviously the matter will proceed forward. And hopefully tonight we can go into some of those concepts in terms of how such a process would go forward. I'm also joined by a distinguished roundtable of experts, I call them up here, and I'll introduce them one by one, starting to my far left. We have Lieutenant Colonel Carmen Reynolds, who is on this roundtable because a representative of the Preserve Navarre movement, the group that was instrumental in moving this process forward. It's actually this group that brought the request to me for consideration. Next, we have Andy DeMartin. Andy is the owner and operator of Andy D's restaurant out here on Navarre Beach, because I thought there might be some questions from a business perspective, and certainly Andy can give you that perspective on what incorporation would mean to a local business in Navarre. I'm also joined by people who are very well versed in how cities are run and managed. To my right, my immediate right, is Tim Bolduc, the Crestview City Manager. So again, if there's any questions about how a city manager functions or how a city functions, I'm sure Tim would be more than happy to field those questions. And to his right, we have the mayor of Destin, Bobby Wagner, who's doing a fantastic job down there in Destin. I know a lot of people in this area, they hear about Destin and they say, we don't want Navarre to be Destin. I'm here to tell you, Bobby, I tell everybody in the district, too late. Unfortunately, in my opinion, someone who's lived here 20 years, Navarre has all of the bad qualities of Destin, but unfortunately not many of the good qualities. And hopefully Bobby can speak to that issue tonight as well, to let you know some of the benefits of incorporation that he has seen personally in Destin. But those are the members of our roundtable. I'd now like to turn it over to our moderator who comes to us tonight from the Navarre Press. That would be Daniel Evans. Daniel, thank you for coming. I'd like to thank Navarre Press for actually playing a role in facilitating this discussion. Again, I'd just like everyone to understand, we actually do have a very small studio audience here. These are people who, as far as I know, come here with no bias whatsoever. They come here because they are citizens interested in asking questions. They are citizens who want to learn more about the process. Perhaps we could start off maybe with a show of hands. We have maybe about 16 people here. Raise your hand if you come here knowing darn well that you want to incorporate Navarre, no questions asked. All right, so we have a couple people. We have a couple members of Preserve Navarre. Of course, you would expect that, right? That they're going to be for incorporation. Who comes here truly, honestly, undecided? You're just here for information gathering. So that would be, I'd say, probably the majority of our studio audience. Who came here tonight saying, I darn well know that we shouldn't incorporate and nothing's going to change my mind? Got a couple people on that front as well. So again, pretty good cross-section, I think, for what we're looking at here in Navarre. So Daniel, that's what you have to work with here locally. I've invited people to log into Navarre Press's Facebook Live and submit questions that way to you. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Daniel Evans. Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation to let Navarre Press be a part of this. Our goal tonight is so that the audience here hears pros and cons and important information so they can make up their mind on how they want to vote on October 12th. And also to the people watching on our social media page, the same thing. So if there is someone who has a question in the audience or has a question for us on Navarre Press's Facebook page, please send it to us. We're reviewing those as best we can while we're doing this. So to the roundtable, I've got a bunch of questions. We're going to try to keep this to an hour. I've got the time in front of me, so if we get stuck on a topic then I'm going to try to move us along if I can, just so that we can get to more information. You know,
and Daniel, not
yes,
to interrupt,
go
but
ahead.
just to our viewing audience, the way I envision this, and Daniel is probably in agreement, if there's a question, I think among the five of us, we can probably differentiate who's probably best qualified. So if it's a technical question about how cities are run, I defer to my gentleman to my right. If it's a question about the impact on businesses, of course, I'm going to defer to Andy D. Questions about how the process actually is undergone, what the role of the state representative, that's where, of course, I jump in. So again, I envision this as being kind of a free-flowing thing. If someone would like to jump in and answer, if someone would like to follow up that answer with their own answer up here on the table, I think all viewpoints from the roundtable members are welcome.
Absolutely. So, you know, I think that there are probably people in Navarre who still want to know how this straw poll is going to work. You know, we've written stories on it, it's been announced, but there are still, I'm sure there are people out there that have questions about that. So, Dr. Rudman, do you want to talk about that first before we jump in too far?
That one goes to me, unfortunately. So just so everybody knows, there are very minimal statutory requirements in Florida statutes when an area wishes to incorporate. Those statutory requirements have already been met by the Preserve Navarre movement and their wishes to incorporate. So at this point, if we wanted to proceed, we very well could. I'm well within statutory authority to take the bill as given to me, file a bill. They've already got a feasibility study that's been submitted to Tallahassee for further review. So at this point, there's really nothing that would stop a representative from moving forward with incorporation if they wanted. Now, Daniel, the way I envision this, the way I was elected, you guys didn't elect me king. You guys didn't say, we trust you, doctor, you go do whatever you think is best. I'm a representative, which means that my role is to represent the views of the majority of my citizens. Well, unfortunately, when it comes to a polarizing topic such as incorporation, it's hard to know where the majority lies. I get people yelling and screaming, unfortunately, on both sides of the issue. And it's hard to know, are those 5 people screaming or 5,000 people screaming? So the straw vote is a requirement that I personally came up with. There was no statutory requirement for a straw poll. Like I said, if I wanted to proceed forward, I could. But that's not how we roll. That's not how I work. I want to do the wishes of the majority of the citizens who would be in the catchment area of the city of Navarre Beach. So here is your opportunity to come out and tell me whether you would like me to proceed with this issue or whether you'd like me to kill it dead. Because as I've told both sides of the argument, as I've told the Preserve members and the Protect members, you get one shot at this. This is the one shot during my legislative time in Tallahassee. So this straw vote is to tell me, yay or nay, is there a majority of citizens in the catchment area who would like me to proceed? Now, having said that, sitting out is not an option. So if you're someone who says, well, I don't even think that's worthy of a vote, all right, well then that's how elections work. Elections have consequences. This straw vote is going to have consequences. So if you want to incorporate, the best way to have your opinion known, it's not to yell and scream, it's not to send emails. You turn out October 12th, the straw vote. If you don't want to incorporate, the best way to have your wishes acknowledged, it's not to boycott the vote. It's not to sit at home. It's not to send me hate mail every day or to respond to my Facebook posts on unassociated topics. The best way for me to know your wishes is to turn out October 12th and vote a resounding no if you don't wish me to proceed further. Because like I said, the majority will have it as far as I'm concerned. And that's why we're here to answer questions about how this works and what a potential city might look like.
So a couple more for you, Dr. Rudman.
Sure.
Previous state representative wanted a 60% supermajority in order to move forward. You only want 50% plus one vote. I just wanted to clarify that and make sure people understand that.
Again, that's how elections work. When I ran for my first office 2 years ago, I would have hated for someone to have raised the bar on me. You shoot for 50% plus one in every election. This one's no different.
So that people understand, if a majority vote in favor, which means the process would continue, you would introduce a bill into the legislature. Can you talk about what that process would look like moving forward?
The straw vote was at my request. It shows me that I have a majority of opinion wanting me to sponsor the bill. The actual idea, the concept of the bill will then come up at a legislative delegation meeting, which is held right here in Santa Rosa County before the start of session. We hold one before every session. So such a bill would have to be approved by a majority of the legislative delegation here locally, which would be myself, Representative Alex Andrade, and we assume Senator Don Gates, if the election goes the way that I personally would like it to go. No offense to his challenger, but so you would have to have 2 of the 3 members of the delegation vote yes. We're gonna approve this bill moving forward. It would then go to Tallahassee. It would have to be presented in at least 2, if not 3 committees, and voted on by the state legislature members in those committees, at which point it would go to the full entire Florida House for a vote. It would then have to be approved by the Florida Senate, and even after all that arduous challenge and all that tough road, that bill would still come back to Navarre for a final, not a popularity vote, but for a final binding referendum. So again, you understand it's a very long and arduous process. I don't wish to start the process if my citizens do not want this.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So, have you talked to the other members of the delegation? Have you talked to Alex? And I know Don is obviously still up for election, but have you had a conversation with them about how they might feel about this issue?
So I'd rather not speak for other members of the legislature, but I'm sure they'd be willing to maybe give their opinion as we move forward. And certainly, again, the results of the straw poll, I think, will be very conclusive one way or the other. I think that will help legislators determine what the proper path forward is.
So a couple more questions about the straw poll, just so that we have all the information out there. Honest Ballots is the company that is running the straw poll that Preserve Navarre has hired to do that. There are people out there who would argue, they'd say, hey, you're paying for the vote, you're paying for them to run the election, you may get the results you want because of that. How would you calm those fears? Carmen, that might be the best question for you.
Everything that has been done so far has been done by the book, by the statutory regulations, by the recommendations of the previous state representative, and now we have a new one because he left early. We are comprised of a lot of former and retired military members. I would like to say that I operate on truth and integrity, and I expect this process to be executed accordingly.
Do we know how the results will be announced that night?
Well, and I'd like to follow up on that if you have just a
Go ahead,
second.
yeah.
So my understanding is that this is a nationwide company that the movement has sought out and enlisted. So I don't think a nationwide company would also risk their reputation because again, they have much bigger fish to fry than what's going on here in our community of Navarre. So when you talk about people who are, who have business clients the nation over, I don't think they're willing to risk their integrity to say, well, they wrote the check, so let's have the results. So again, I think you truly are going to see an honest ballot. But Lieutenant Colonel, I'd also like to make the point that my original idea of how you could prove to me that you have majority was to put language on the ballot like we did in 2014. That was a request that was given to the county commissioners 10 years ago by a state representative who did not live in Navarre. And it was not an issue back then. They were more than happy to put the question on the ballot, again, as a non-binding referendum. In other words, you're not signing yourself up for anything that can't be reversed. It's a popularity poll. They had no problem, the county commissioners, in putting that language on the ballot 10 years ago. I gave our county commissioners that opportunity this go round. I think, Lieutenant Colonel, y'all probably went to I don't know how many Board of County Commissioner meetings to plead to put that language on the ballot. Someone in the audience is saying they went 3 separate times. I, as your state representative, y'all understand I have no role in a Board of County Commissioners meeting. That is not my arena, but I went there to also beg and plead for this language to be put on the ballot, and I was rebuffed. So for any detractors or for anyone who says, well, this doesn't seem like it's honest to me, I don't know, Daniel, what other option these citizens had. They went to their elected county commissioners who rebuffed them. Their state representative took up their cause and went to those county commissioners, and I likewise was rebuffed. So again, this is the path that they've chosen, and we'll see how the votes come out.
Perfect. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'd like to piggyback on Representative Rudman's comments. In good faith, we raised extra money to get this feasibility study concluded and submitted. When we received feedback that there were some concerns with it, we hired a company to review it in depth, and then we course corrected and revised some of the inconsistencies that were pointed out in good faith to make sure that we had the most valid, current, and accurate feasibility study, which was hand-delivered to Tallahassee 2 weeks ago.
So, I don't know if we know, I just wanted to make it clear. So, results the night, on October 12th, how will people get those results? Do we know the answer? And then I'll move on from the vote. I just wanted to put that out there so that people would know how those are announced by honest ballots. Because when I did a story with them, they were not sure at that moment. It was at the very beginning of the process. And if we don't know, we'll move on. I was just curious.
That'd be a question for the people.
Okay. I just wanted to make it clear so that people would know where they could find them that night.
Absolutely.
So, the feasibility study obviously has been a huge discussion, not only with the commission, as you guys mentioned. One thing that is in the feasibility study is a millage rate of 0.95, which is very low. I mean, Crestviews, I think, is 6.8466. Fort Walton Beach is over 4, and Niceville's is 3.5. So, is that a reasonable projection for a city millage rate for a city to be able to function?
I'd like to defer to Destin Mayor, because we actually talked about millage rates previously.
So if you guys get that millage rate, you'll be the lowest in the state. Right now, Destin is the second lowest at 1.615. But just for that question specifically, I think it's a great and fair jumping off point, especially with the goals that you guys in Navarre have in mind. I think that, again, that is getting the job done without getting too much into big government, and that really allows you guys to start moving forward without asking too much. I thought I was low at 1.6, but yeah, I'm going to be sad to move this third place if you guys go to 1. You're going to drop all of us down the list by 1. Third doesn't sound as good as second lowest in Florida.
And Bobby, you're also my math wizard. I think we talked about what that would mean to the average Destin resident with your millage rates. What's the difference they see? Like if they were to be in Okaloosa County versus Destin, how much do their taxes go up on those millage rates?
Yeah, so the millage rate, I know that kind of sounds like a crazy term. At the end of the day, let's just round it up to 1, which means for every $100,000 that is on your property appraisals tax, which is what you bought for, minus any exemptions that you have on there, it's $100. So you're asking for your citizens to pay $90 for every $100,000 of what their property is worth minus their exemptions after that. So again, and that's per year. You're asking $90 a year right now to put it into kind of some quantitative numbers there. And with the population that you guys have, I'm sure that could come up to a couple $1 million worth of funding, general funds for your city. One thing to note for you guys that Destin at least is in the situation of, while we are right now currently the second lowest at 1.6, we operate a $72 million a year budget. We get about $12 million from our landowners in ad valorem tax, which is this millage. However, that 12 to the 72 means that for every dollar you give us, we're out there fighting and finding grants and working with our representatives and county commissioners for every other dollar. So right now, for every $1 that the city asks the citizens to pony up, we're going out there doubling down by 5-fold, bringing your $1 to now $6. And that, I think, one of the biggest positions that a city can have is not only taxing the locals and adding one more layer of tax, but using those dollars to find money that you couldn't, as an individual, ever even imagine going for as a grant opportunity. Because a lot of things are state statute locked in for so many different reasons.
Tim, would you like to answer that question too, with your role with the city of Crestview?
So as it relates to the millage rate?
Yes, sir.
Well, one, you gave, the millage rate was too high that you gave for Crestview. We've actually dropped it twice. We've actually had two reductions in our millage rate in the last 3 years. But the interesting part about that is Bobby said your budget's what, 70 million?
Yeah, 70, 72.
Yeah, and so ours this year will be somewhere right around the 50 million. So even though the millage rate is higher than what it is in Destin, it's all based on property values. And so I actually, and I'm sure you'll have questions about the study. I did review the study. I was asked to review the study prior to the changes that were made some suggestions on that. And looking at the study, looking at where they are identifying revenue sources, and then what their initial proposal for a millage rate is, it is a very conservative approach, but I also think it is enough for them to do exactly what they're trying to do to get the process started.
Bobby, just bringing you back in, Dr. Rudman kind of started this with, "Hey, don't Destin my Navarre," you know, that's what he said at the beginning. Sorry, you know, but you know, so you've seen some of the challenges a beach community might face. I mean,
Yeah.
what do you think about some of the challenges Navarre might face?
And so, while I'm over here for the Blue Angel stuff, driving through on the boat and everything. I think to the point of we don't want to be Destin, I think some of the biggest issues in Destin happened before we were incorporated.
Right.
While we allowed the county to run wild with just open development and no comp plan, which is a comprehensive plan, no vision of the future. The county, for their defense, isn't in the business of doing that. At the end of the day, a county is the administrative arm of the state. The state does all these appropriation bills, all these different things and services that are required that we expect them to do, and the county is that administrative local arm to do the will and the bidding of the state. So when it comes down to Destin, I'm now fighting and trying to course correct issues that had been planted in place before I was born. I'm 30 now. You know, I look 12 for everyone in the audience. I'm not 12 years old. I am 30. I had my first gray hair last month. But to the point of we don't want to be Destin, the biggest issues in Destin were happening before Destin, and unfortunately, a lot of where you guys are at now, at some point the straw breaks, and you guys say we've had enough of how things are operating because you're not looking out for my backyard and my front door. And now at this point, it's going to take us coming together to write our new rules. Does it come with a little bit of incentive? And if you want to join this ship is now going to be guided by you guys. So that's my biggest issue, and I guess suggestion to you guys is it comes down to, do you want to be in charge of your own ship and pay a fee to be on that boat, or do you want someone else to drive a boat and have no say on where it goes? It's really where it boils down to.
So, reading the feasibility study, there's a lot of departments in the city that are outlined that will still rely on county collaboration or the county alone to handle those tasks, those important departments that would be, you know, like the sheriff's office. How can Preserve Navarre or the city of Navarre provide a higher level of service without raising taxes?
Are you guys wanting to answer that? If you want to.
I'd like to preface my remarks by the importance of this day and this meeting. What a calamitous day on September the 11th. And we are sitting among 7 military bases, one of which is a special operations base that I retired from. So with that being said, why incorporate? I have been involved in the county on the zoning board as a Holly Navarre Fire Commissioner, as an instrumental citizen furthering community needs, a volunteer in many areas, attending most of the meetings, always at our Holly Navarre Water System Board meetings. So for the last 30 years, I have been involved to the extent that perhaps many of you may not have had the free time and the ability to do. But your government work works best when it is closest to you, and it is not close to us. There were many times I couldn't get to the meetings because of a traffic jam on I-10 or a backup on 87 when the bridge was closed due to the damage from Hurricane Sally. So I am personally involved and invested in what's going on. And I've seen many things that you all may not be privy to. I've seen our county commissioner overridden in his own district on decisions that he should make by the other commissioners. I've seen our county commissioner, who needs our support in many other ways, to include Incorporation, crowded out of a position that he should chair because he might be the new guy on the block. But it's his district and he got crowded out, when that should have been our decision by our commissioner. I've seen the reverence that is given to the cities that come up and ask for money at the county commission. They work collaboratively, just like we as a city would with our county. Jay asks for money. They are treated with reverence and respect. The city of Gulf Breeze, the same. They fall all over themselves to help these cities. There is another one, the city of Milton. Why can't we be the same? We have experienced exponential growth in the last 10 years, and we haven't been the masters of our destiny whatsoever. We are the recipients of what's happened because we aren't involved in the equation. And I put together some notes here. Our zoning board gets overruled by the commissioners. So our say got diluted right then and there. So why do we continue doing the same thing and getting the same results? So I wanted you all to know from the grassroots what is going on up there. I have fought for our right to speak. I got you 4 minutes. Do you know that as soon as they changed the guard up there, they reduced that to 3 minutes and wanted to close down public forum and not let you all speak? How is that right? We need our own government right here close to us, looking out for Navarre. Thank you.
If you want to just hold, I have another question for you that I think would be best for you, Cartman. So the feasibility study is a huge document. There are people that have not read that entire document and have not broken it down. They don't have the time. They're watching this to find out information. So if this straw poll passes and Navarre ends up incorporating, which obviously we talked about that process a few minutes ago, what would the makeup of Navarre city government look like? How would that be decided? Would it be based on the feasibility study that's in place now, or would the citizens have some say once that process is completed?
I don't claim to be an expert on incorporation, but I would believe that the citizens would make that decision because they're going to be the ones to put up the individuals to fill those positions. And if we don't have the in-house expertise, we will have to put out job notices to get those experts to run a city government.
All right, I think Tim and Dr. Rudman might jump in on that too. Thank you.
In terms of the actual setup of the government, there's a charter that's created as well, and I believe it'd be a city manager form of government for Navarre, and I'll turn it over to Tim.
So couple things to answer, if you don't mind, can I back up to the last question?
Absolutely.
All right, to answer the last question, actually my good friend to the right here, Bobby, is a perfect example of what happens, what is the benefit or potential benefit when you are an incorporated city that does not provide all of your own services. So the city of Destin does not provide its own fire service, it does not provide its own police service, it does not provide its water or sewer service. But what the city of Destin does have is Bob. It has a voice.
Better or worse.
For better or worse. Right, for better or worse, but it has a voice. And so when the city of Destin determines that it wants to increase its police presence, it makes an investment it's a contract negotiation to increase its police presence, and it does it that way. The other thing that the Lieutenant Colonel said that is an incredibly important part of this conversation is that one of the great things about this country is that we have the ability to make the decisions closest to us. And so, obviously I'm a city guy. I work at the city. My education is in public administration. We had a county election in a primary decided by 13 votes in Okaloosa County. And the reality of it is, when we allow the decision, the reason that there would be, and I'm not in Santa Rosa County, I have no desire to come over here, so I'm going to say it. The reason that there would be an apprehension from allowing this on the ballot is because the decisions that do get made with the things like revenue sharing that are inside the study. So if you read the study, it'll talk about revenue sharing, which is the taxes that are already paid on fuel tax and the things that fund the way potholes get filled. All of those decisions are being made in a different location than they are here. And so for what happens is when there is an incorporated city, there becomes a motivation to collaborate on projects that are like traffic projects and things like that. Not to mention, I spent all of yesterday and the majority of today working with developers out of New York, with property owners here in Crestview, on trying to help developers in New York understand why to bring certain types of businesses into our city. When we don't have people to represent us in that way, what happens is we get what we get. And so, those two things are directly related to so when you were talking about one millage rate, the little bit of money that Bobby just explained would be paid. It's not just that little bit of money. It's also the revenue sharing that comes. It's also the vote on the DOT's, what is it?
TPO.
The TPO, the Transportation Planning Organization. It's who decides what projects get prioritized on all Department of Transportation projects. Right now, the city of Navarre, or what will potentially be the city of Navarre, has no voice. Tim understands it. You guys do that. And so, good sound, having the ability to control in some way the planning that happens to ensure that traffic is mitigated when projects come in, things like that. Those are those other than tax benefits that you potentially have when you have a city. The other question was, what happens, does the feasibility study become the form of government? The answer to that question is no. You will adopt a charter. That charter will be created more than likely by a charter committee is typically how that's done. And then depending on how it happens in the vote, the initial vote for the establishment of it, there may be some specific members that are established at the very beginning. Those things will be a part of the bill that Dr. Rudman is putting forward for that initial form of establishment. But the entire thing is a public process. It's not as though this straw poll vote means that everybody that's put all this work in it has a seat. They may not have a seat. It's an election process.
So there's been a lot of talk about the feasibility study. One of the commissioners called it a utopian wish list earlier this year, and people have tried to poke holes in it. So Dr. Rudman, when the legislature is considering this, obviously the feasibility study has already been submitted. What does the process look like to evaluate that? To try to poke holes in it, to see if there's problems.
I want to start by asking the person who said that, are they still in office? Because I know we threw 2 of those commissioners out. So I think those are the consequences when you don't listen to the people who put you in that office. Okay, the people demand to be heard, and they should be heard. And again, that's the whole point of the straw. That's the whole point of moving forward with incorporation, if that's what Navarre wishes. But your question was.
Yeah, so the feasibility study, does somebody break that down and say, hey, this isn't going to work because of X?
So I probably know more about that than I care to know, because again, we had people who, in my opinion, were not qualified to pick a feasibility study, or they've never seen one before in their life. So I spent multiple weeks on the phone with my silo staff in Tallahassee, people who are actually on the payroll of the Florida legislature, who have been there 20 years, 30 years. It is their job from 9 to 5 to wake up every morning and break apart feasibility studies. And so every time we would get a criticism here locally from some member of the public, don't you know I'm in my doctor's office calling Tallahassee, hey, are they right? Is there something we need to do? Not at all, not at all. They don't know what they're talking about. So to reassure the population out there isn't an entire silo, an entire department of professionals in the Florida legislature that have already received the feasibility study. So as there are issues or concerns, those will be brought to our attention. I think, Tim, you want to make some comments on that as well.
I mean, one of the comment I was going to make is, Dr. Rudman made me read it. So
128 pages,
right,
both of us read it.
Right, and so, one of the things that's why we have representatives. All jokes aside, Dr. Rudman called me, he said, hey, have you read this thing? Do you understand how it works? We had some very candid conversations. I have had candid conversations with the Preserve Navarre people about some of the stuff that was in this study originally. The reality of it is the statute is very vague on what's required. But it is a feasibility study, and actually in its quality, it is better than the majority of feasibility studies that get a project like this way further than this one is. There are some outlines about the way that the government will be run, but it is just a study that says if it's established in a form like this, can it and will it be successful? I've actually talked to his team over there as well about it, answering some specific questions about how things would work here as it relates to distribution of tax revenue, revenue sharing, and some things like that. And so, it is not intended to be a charter. It's not intended to even be a business plan. It is a feasibility study. Is it feasible that this could work? And if it does, what's the next thing?
Carmen, did you want to weigh in on that?
Yes. And the numbers, when I said that Navarre has grown exponentially, we're talking about a 46,000 and increasing population. So where we should be weighing in, we have no way to weigh in. For example, the mucky mucks, the big leaders that are trying to solve the traffic issue, the generals from Eglin, from Hurlburt, Dr. Rudman, and key members from our county, which don't include our county commissioner for District 4, and where's the problem? District 4, they aren't at the table. So the leaders said, all the cities are here, the city of Mary Esther, the city of Crestview, the city of Navarre. Well, they didn't know when they said the city of Navarre that we have no representation. Dr. Rudman's trying to cover that in the absence of our commissioner, who isn't even going to that because he's been upstaged. So we get left out on a lot of things. And what is the problem? You can't even get through Navarre to get up to the Publix on Aldora, Andorra. We have issues that should be worked that aren't being worked because the county is so big, so geographically separated, that nobody is paying attention to Navarre, the citizens of Navarre, what the people need. I'll tell you one thing, the traffic infrastructure, stormwater mitigation, all of these things should be addressed. Oh, another box store, another storage area. Why don't we have some decent restaurants? Well, we're in one tonight. Okay? I didn't have to cover anything because we finally have, some good ones coming on board, but we need more. And who's looking out for us on zoning? Right now, the county is getting ready to burden you all with billions of dollars of infrastructure for the biggest development ever going in our county. 32,000 residents will be added on 2,800 acres. Did you know about that? We need representation to protect our area. We need parks and recs. Our county can't afford the time or the personnel to man a parks and recs department and give a list of all the parks and recs and upgrade them, etc. A city could do that, and we don't have it, but it's at our fingers if you all could see what the benefits are of small increments every month, about $32, and we could get some sidewalks, we could get some pedestrian safety. People could quit being killed on their bicycles and trying to walk across the street around here.
Go ahead, Dr.
Wait,
Ray.
4 minutes.
Well, and you had asked earlier, I think, and we all gone around there. I wanted to bring Andy.
I had a question for him next.
Well,
so
so
go ahead. Yeah.
he's got a
I'll
very.
just sit quietly.
Oh, no,
I talk all day.
So you had asked about what are the benefits of incorporation if you don't do everything. I think as a business owner, there are definitely some benefits to dealing with someone on a local level rather than having to. I think Andy could probably enlighten us on his experience on that.
Well, first, I just want to say generally, the group here is very educated on what's going on. And they seem very passionate about what's going on. And I don't think this is a new movement. This has been going on for years. We're coming to a point where we're getting some traction. And so the thing that I found is that as you get a higher population, your voice gets a lot less. You get quieter and quieter and quieter. And what we're trying to do, or what at least the corporation will do for you, is it will give you a louder voice. As I told Dr. Joel a couple of days ago, it's very nice to see a mayor come into my restaurant and I could sit down with him and talk to him. Because at the local board meeting and all that is probably not when you can really hear my voice. Anytime you want to come in. But honestly, you know, that sense of your voice gets louder when your government is smaller and you're closer to your government is not a fable, it's the truth. And so you want to look at the overall truths of this. The devil's in the details on the plan and the overall plan and how it gets worked out. But government moves slow for a reason. It moves slow for a reason so populations can catch up to the actual needs of a government. Unfortunately, what's happened in like Destin, the building and the developing and the money and the greed for that moved way faster than the population's voice did. And I think this is a good opportunity for Navarre to kind of settle into, hey, we want to hear our voice. Maybe we do want a Destin, maybe we don't want a Destin. But you're never going to know unless you hear those voices. And I'm sure that the county government is not hearing the voices. And I think the straw poll at least gives you an opportunity to give your voice, whether it's good or bad, on what this happens. And so yes, as a business owner, and probably the highest paying taxpayer, or one of the highest paying taxpayers on the beach, I would like to have my voice heard. I would not like to go to a county commissioner that's up in Milton or Pace and not be overridden by him or not heard by him because I'm paying all my taxes here in Navarre. And so I think this gives everybody an opportunity to get a little closer to their government, which is really all we really want from our government officials, is to be heard and to understand our point of view. And we may not be in the population that's going to win this side or the other side, but at least I know my voice is heard because the mayor's sitting there and he's eating my fresh fish. So
There's a lot of truth.
Yeah.
absolutely,
There's a lot of truth.
absolutely, and I come from an area like that. I come from an area with 13 or 14 village mayors, and you know I sat on. I was the public safety commissioner for the 5th largest town in America. So I've had town councilmen, town board members, county executives at my side. But the only real way to get their ear is to be next to them. And I don't think we can get next to county government. It's just too high of a level of government. And with the population growing, your voice is going to get less and less, not more and more. I can promise you that from experience. All right, shoot, what do you got?
I think you answered my question. I was going to ask you what the
I'm
pros
also
of.
clairvoyant, that's why I run your restaurant. And I know what you want to eat, so we'll have it after.
Well, we appreciate you letting us do this here tonight, for
Yeah.
sure. So, one question I definitely wanted to ask is with the feasibility study, it includes the Navarre Beach area. And there has been discussions that people in Navarre Beach want to do their own thing. They want to incorporate separately. So what is Yeah.
Can I answer a little bit further?
Go ahead, yeah.
I'm gonna tell you something, I'm supportive of both efforts. Because I think also the people in Navarre Beach should have a voice close to their government. I do think the population may be underscored. I think the state will probably say, hey, that might be too little people for a city, not enough tax income. But you know what? That's where you start to get the feasibility studies. Are there really feasibility studies? Will it break down that way? I've seen very small villages. I've seen very large villages. In this case, it's going to be a city. I've seen very large cities, very small cities. I do think the closer you get to your government is better, but I'm not sure the beach's effort's going to come to fruition at the state level. That's kind of more of our representatives.
So I think there's a total resident population concern about that. But regardless of that, one of the beautiful things about this as an option is that there is nothing that stops you all from doing things like overlay districts and all that. So you can even take the power of a little bit bigger with the total mass of the two of them combined. And again, I have no interest in it. Whatever happens, happens. But just the study and understanding of government is where my appreciation is. But what you do with that is you have overlay districts that you can then create its own identity inside of a much more powerful lobbying entity. And Bobby can definitely say.
And as you just saw, the fire district just got their district on the beach. So I mean, that's very good point.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add on to that is just the quantity of scale, and if you guys are worried about or interested in additional services to replicate them in two places, it might be shooting each other in the foot. But something I'm even looking at, and you're talking about charter and how that looks, right now we have 7 at-large voting city council members who have the vote, and I'm more of a Queen of England with a smile on the wave position. So they're the legislative body, but to that point, if that's an issue, then make the charter to where you have zoning districts of where your councilmen come from. If you have a councilman representing the beach, you have one representing the east, north, and west, and someone has the south, well then you have 4 with a mayor at large, and now you have all parts of Navarre covered. So again, it's always going to be creative thinking is how we're going to get solutions. But again, I don't have any dog in the hunt on this, but I would assume that between tourism development taxes, between the quantity of scale and the ability to do more under one position, part of Destin, so not to go on the negative of incorporation, but Destin took 7 times to incorporate. Hopefully you guys are a little bit more luckier. It came down to, back in the day, there was a couple, maybe a handful of founding family members, one adamantly opposed. So on the 7th go around, they came to her and said, what is it going to take for you to not be such a vocal no? And get your people to just maybe sit out or vote yes on our side. And she said, draw our names out. Well, maybe that was a great compromise then to get the city going, but now we pay for it daily. We pay for it because we see a distinct line in the sand when it goes from quality of a city to the accommodations that a minimal standard that a county requires versus the standards that a city wants and expects. Not to mention the discommunication and just a lot of things that can't happen. And I have residents that are, I would say, less than a quarter mile away from City Hall that are not inside the city limits. And it just becomes chaos later. If that's what it takes to get past, I think, it's the better odds of one. But if there's anything I could suggest, knowing where Destin's at in its 40th year of incorporation and how we got there. We got there by compromising, but now since then, that compromise have left dollars and quality and quality of life on the table for so many in and outside of that city limit. So we're going and having our own annexation on the ballot in 26, and I'm hoping that we get an overwhelming yes, because back in the day, it was a good old boy system and trying to keep out whatever they were trying to keep out, but nowadays, I don't think all that is behind us, and at this point, people want the quality of life that a city provides, and I think we're going to have a unanimous vote on incorporation of our unincorporated areas coming up. No, not unanimous. No, they definitely not unanimous. Sorry. An overwhelming.
Queen of England's pretty good.
Everyone's going to vote for it.
So we've got about 10 minutes. I wanted to make sure that if anybody in the audience had a question, we gave an opportunity to ask. Okay?
Yeah.
I can pass. I can pass.
I've got a question. If
Hold on, let us get you the microphone so that everybody can hear your question.
I've got a firefighter's voice, you can't hear me. Yeah. Anyway, my name's Bill Layton, I live in Navarre, I'm a retired firefighter. I've got a question for Dr. Rudman. If Navarre becomes incorporated, is there anything you can do to get funds from the state to Navarre? That's my question.
Thank you, Bill, for that question, and the answer is a resounding yes.
And not just the state funds.
Well, and, and to be honest with everybody, that's probably the most frustrating, Bill, part of my job in Tallahassee. Part of the job that I didn't know about, you kind of learn on the job as you get there, is bringing money back home to your district. And of course, I live in Navarre, so you know where I'd like to bring money to. I'd like to bring money home to my own community. So you can imagine, as I'm sitting there executing my duties as a state representative, and I have an appointment book full of people coming with wish lists. One of whom is Tim, and I'm always happy to fill that wish list, Tim. So
I just figured out that this is bad for me.
so City of Crestview comes in with their Christmas list. Town of Jay has a quite modest Christmas list that they come in. City of Milton comes in with a list of about 8 or 10 items they would love state funding for. I'm sure Gulf Breeze also comes by. I'm sure Destin probably hits up their state representative. So you can imagine, Daniel, being in Navarre and Mr. Layton being from Navarre. I keep waiting for that ask for someone to come by and actually fill out appropriations paperwork. Hey, we need a pedestrian overwalk over 98. Hey, we need more money for converting septic to sewer, or whatever the ask might be. And because we don't have a city government, Navarre's requests come from the Board of County Commissioners. Now understand, and again, I like the point that Bobby brought up earlier, it's not the county's fault. They are not set up for this. It is not in their job description. So by no means do I intend to throw the county under the bus, but the fact of the matter is, Bill, when they come with their wish list, it's 10 items. But those 10 items have to take care of Pace, Chumuckla, East Milton, Holly, Navarre. So again, not throwing them under the bus. It's certainly not their fault. But our ask list for Navarre ends up being 1 or 2 items, whereas Crestview's, no offense, is 6 or 7, or Jay's is 3 or 4. So that's how that works. So of course, I would love the opportunity to greet the mayor of Navarre or a city councilman from Navarre in my office in Tallahassee, because if you were ever going to get funding for Navarre, now's the time to do it.
We did about $4 million in funds. One of them was a fire tower, which you would like, fire training tower. So I mean, there's definitely, and it's not just for us. It's not just funds. We also participated in lobbying against bad legislation and things like that go on over there, and it gives you a voice. And so when a bill is on the floor that's going to be discussed, and the mayor comes and speaks and says, this is going to hurt me in my backyard, whether it's vacation rentals or whether it's those kind of things that a lot of times are a hot button, it gives you that corporate voice.
And Bill, just to be clear, that mayor of Navarre, I know Tim was joking, you're not competing against Crestview for those dollars. I'll tell you who you're competing against. You're competing against Miami-Dade.
Yeah.
You're competing against Orlando, because those folks are organized, they are incorporated, and they carry a lot of weight. So the state is going to spend that money somewhere. I'd rather them spend it in Navarre than spend it in Hialeah. No offense to Hialeah.
And just even, I know you're out of time, but just so let's take COVID as an example. So when COVID hit, there was ARPA money that was handed out. We were able to spend a significant amount of money helping to stand up our small businesses inside of our community, because those allocations came directly to cities. And so we received in the millions of dollars that went towards making improvements and creating for our restaurants. We used that money to create an opportunity to do drive-throughs on sit-down restaurants like this, so this guy could hand his fish out the window when the rest of the world was telling him don't go eat. And that wasn't his fault. And so, but because we were incorporated, there was when it came to the county, the administrative arm then had to allocate portions of it to each of the municipalities, which then got to give it to and use it to do grant programs and stuff for the people that were closest to them.
We got another audience question.
So first of all, thanks for having us here and for doing this and getting this information out. Full disclosure, I do work for a city government, so I'm probably partial in that aspect. A few things I just kind of wanted to point out too that I think is good concern that I give people is this isn't just your government that has a voice in there too. There's all sorts of civilian boards that partake in this. I mean, these are non-elected people. You want to step up, you want to be part of this. You've got your board of adjustments. I've heard many people complaining about the county approving rezonings and some stuff. That stuff that gets done locally. That's not stuff that goes through your board of adjustments. Get the local resident information out there and their input for these things rather than some faceless body up in the my concern and some of the stuff I've heard from people on this is just some of the stuff, and I know it's feasibility, something's going to end up being there. But I know some people are concerned on like the financial side of this stuff. And I know the millage rate sounds great, and hey, it can be super cheap for everybody there. But when you look at some of the stuff, like some of the salaries that you're proposing to pay your people, I mean, for a government of 44,000 people, in your director positions are proposing to pay $70,000 a year. That's not realistic and stuff. And so I know some people are concerned that it's going to come down. It's like, oh, well, you're saying it's going to be this millage rate, this low, but is it really? Is it going to be incorporated and then there's going to be the bait and switch? I know it's kind of part of the concern.
So, question.
I really don't have a question. That's just two statements. Number one,
Speak up.
I'm a fireman too, and I can't hear my left ear anymore. So you're gonna have to talk a lot
First of
louder.
all, I applaud this panel. My wife was for this. I was on the fence. Wes and I have talked about this. I'm a facts and figure type of guy.
Yep.
And that's what I wanted to hear tonight. And what you all said, that's what me to the positive. Okay? I really like what I heard, and I'm for you. Second statement. Can you hear me?
We heard that part.
I heard you're for us.
My mouthpiece. The second part is when you're talking about a straw vote. Now, both my wife and I are election officials here. We are actually in the biggest precinct here in the county. And when I heard about this, I read about this company. This company follows the same procedures that Santa Rosa does. Santa Rosa is a very solid, reliable, as far as handling an election. And for following those methods, which I read, this will be a very good vote, and both sides can feel comfortable that they'll be represented well and impartially by this company.
Well, and I know that really wasn't a question, but and just so you know, like I said, we exhausted every avenue to try and get that language on the ballot so people can feel secure that okay, Tabby Villain, who's an excellent supervisor of elections, we thought people would have that comfort level. And again, you're talking to a freshman state representative. I have to be perfectly honest with you. When I gave them that extra hurdle to jump over, I just assumed as state representative that once they got to that point, I could go to Tappy and say, let's put the language on the ballot. I was told well into this process, sorry, Dr. Rudman, you do not have constitutional authority. It must come from the Board of County Commissioners. So in other words, maybe a little faux pas on my part. I did not intend to drop this in the lap of our county commissioner. Again, no one up here is trying to throw them under the bus. Now that the primaries are over, I don't mind confiding in you. I got several phone calls from county commissioners, some of whom aren't going to be around anymore, but they expressed concern that, look, any other year, this wouldn't have been a problem, but this is an election. Please don't bring this to my committee, So, again, my apologies, freshman mistake. Maybe I should have said from the outset that, hey, I will accept a straw, but maybe I never should have mentioned going to the board. And again, for that, I apologize. It was not intended as a political maneuver. It was not intended to put anyone on the hot seat. I think a gentleman such as yourself, I think you could understand that I'm putting myself on the hot seat just by being on this panel. So that was not my intention to throw the board of county commissioners under the bus, and I sincerely hope they accept my apologies on it.
So we obviously want to make sure that we're including the people who are commenting on Facebook.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask a question. This one is fairly specific, but I'm going to ask it anyways for Mark Kinsey. The question was, should Incorporation succeed, how will the city shoulder the stormwater runoff project estimated at $20 million that the county has planned? Obviously, stormwater runoff is a big talking point. So
City
if somebody
manager
could talk
for
about
sure
that.
is
Go
gonna
for it.
Lots of grants. I'm sure you're gonna say lots of grants.
Calling the state representative.
Yeah, I mean, so stormwater doesn't know any borders either, right? So I don't know, I'm not familiar with the project, right? It's a Navarre project. So I don't know if it's already on their capital schedule. I don't know that it's fair for me to even try to answer that question. What I can tell you is that, we did a $27 million road project that was a partnership between us and the county, that the road went where I wanted the road to go. The connecting road went where I wanted it to go because I could speak for my people. And so when you're addressing things like stormwater and just determining when those projects occur, if there's not a voice in the room, it doesn't happen. So as far as the specific project, it's not fair for me to try to answer that question.
Is there anyone else in the audience who has a question tonight?
Probably don't recognize me from church without my family, but my issue is we've seen it with J.R. Williamson, Doug Robson, and probably we'll see it with Don Gates, that they create these conditions. They say, well, we're not going to support a bill to incorporate Navarre unless the county commission has this non-binding referendum first, this countywide election supervised by the Board of Elections. My issue is that we're a room full of Republicans, a county full of Republicans, and here these guys are essentially rewriting the statute to say, hey, I'm only going to support this unless this other mechanism of government takes place. So how do we stop that kind of like runaway legislature, invented as you go
Shenanigans.
Well, and to the credit of people like Lieutenant Colonel Reynolds, I got to admit that I'm guilty of that as well. Running for public office, I'd never run for office before. People are hassling me on both sides of the equation. Hey, are you for incorporation or against? Well, I don't really care, but I think a decision needs to be made. And so people say, well, what are your priorities? What are you going to demand from them to reach that benchmark? And I didn't realize, like you say, we could make up the rules as we went along. The only rule that I put in place, and again, it's not in statute, so that's why I say I'm as guilty of it as any legislator. I asked that we go with the majority opinion of the people who are going to be affected by that policy. I can tell you in my limited experience in Tallahassee, there's nothing worse than voting on a bill and you're convinced that it's a bad bill and you're looking around and saying, who benefits? We're going to force this down people's throats. Where did this bill come from? So I'm the last person who wants to be known for doing that to my home community. So the only hurdle that I put in place was, let's be sure that we have majority support. Now, to your question about the other members of the legislative delegation, those would be good questions to ask of them individually. Senator Gates, I have reason to believe that we can maybe go to him with the results of a straw poll, and maybe again how I feel like that's significant. That may be significant to the senator. That may be significant to Representative Andrade. But I agree, the statutes are very vague. I don't know why they were written that way. I can tell you, I believe my predecessor, Representative Williamson, actually wanted to clarify those statutes. I think he had actually proposed a bill that would change the statutes for how incorporation actually occurs. Because right now there is no rule book. The rule book is wide open. So my understanding is that my predecessor actually wanted to put rules in place that would apply across the state. That way there is no shenanigans, there is no finagling. Unfortunately, that bill, I'm not sure it even ever got a hearing. So, yeah, so we're stuck with what we're stuck with. But like I said, the fact that I live in the catchment area, the fact that I've been a resident of Navarre for ongoing 20 years now, I feel like I probably understand the situation better than any representative you've had previously.
Back to stormwater management.
Secret ballot.
Because that's what your original question was, stormwater management.
That's correct.
Just to give you my own personal experience about dealing with the county and stormwater management. Since the existence of this parking lot in this building, the water of the county road runs into my parking lot and floods the parking lot where I have to others. If they can't manage my parking lot, what makes you think they can manage anything else? The only way you're gonna get this myopic kind of drilled down government is if you have your own and you have the use. I can tell you right now, the county does not care about my parking. They won't come and fix it. And actually, some of the transitions that they've done here are beautiful and beautification, and they've made the problem worse. So just understand, bigger government doesn't need to be reactive. They just need to do something, and then they put a Band-Aid on it and move on. So. Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Rudman, I was curious, I know you've been a legislator for 2 years. What has come across your desk in the past legislative sessions for Navarre? I'm very curious. Could you speak to the initiatives that have come from the county to you on behalf of Navarre, please?
I want a parking lot.
All you gotta see money.
So I don't know, Lieutenant Colonel, who put you up to that, but it's a wonderful opportunity to give some applause to a local hero, Fire Chief Danny Fury, out here on Navarre Beach. So we talked about the appropriations process and how people have to actually come and ask for state funding. I don't fill out the paperwork for them. You have to fill out paperwork. For some people, it's not worth their bother. I have a lot of nonprofits who choose not to ask for state funding for their own reasons. But here's a fire chief in Danny Fury out here on Navarre Beach, comes to Tallahassee of his own volition, lets me know that we need a fire rescue boat out here on the beach. He said, we have so many rescues that we do out here, disabled boats, people out in the water, we have no craft to get out there. Now we have people on Navarre Beach who are very generous and who have donated a lot of money to Fire Chief Fury. But Danny, in this one case, Lieutenant Colonel, he was a Navarre resident, a Navarre hero who was willing to come to Tallahassee, fill out the appropriation, fill out the paperwork, talk to me mano a mano and say, you have no idea how important this is. And so there's one Navarre project that was presented to me, and that got fully funded.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
If the fire district was not existent, how would you even give them that?
Yeah.
If there's no mechanism to government to receive money, like Navarre receives money from county, you would have not been able to get that district money. I was a district commissioner for 25 years, so thank you for the vote.
And Lieutenant Colonel, I wanted to also take the opportunity, we're probably out of time, but you made reference to something that I'm not sure people picked up on. So the biggest problem we currently face in Navarre is an infrastructure problem. I don't know how many people have to die on Highway 98 for us to realize that we're in crisis mode here in Navarre. 50,000 people can't have one road in and one road out. So your state representative who lives here, we've kind of kick-started a local roundtable, a little bit bigger than this. Again, we bring in all the leaders from the Tri-County area, including the representatives from Hurlburt and Eglin. Y'all know we called a press conference earlier this summer because for the first time in history, Hurlburt and Eglin are actually willing to admit that they agree there is a problem on Highway 98. It took Eglin 20 years to agree to that yes, there is a problem, we need to find a solution. So y'all know we called that press conference a couple months ago. We have now held 3 roundtables hosted by Hurlburt Airfield. And like I said, Eglin's there. The city of Destin, Bobby, You were supposed to sit next to me yesterday. City of Mary Esther had representation. We had county commissioners from Okaloosa County. We had one county commissioner from Santa Rosa who is not the Navarre County Commissioner.
Of course.
We had local and civic leaders. We had members of the chambers of commerce, and we had everybody you can imagine. So when you're talking about how we're going to solve a problem that is exclusively in the domain of Navarre, exclusively affects Navarre more than anybody, we had city council members from Gulf Breeze. They were invited. So everyone's at the table. I look around and there's no city of Navarre. I am basically the de facto voice of Navarre. So who would be the voice of Navarre if your representative were not from here? There's no mechanism. You have no voice. When it comes to the things that matter to you the most, you do not have a seat at the table. And for those of you that are watching on Facebook Live through Navarre Press, go to my Facebook post, Dr. Joel Rudman from Florida House, from earlier this morning, because I had a snapshot of the roundtable, which was massive. Everybody in the Panhandle was there, except Navarre has no municipal voice.
And this is after the bases have already had to short circuit and move squadrons out of state because they could not get the infrastructure support here and get their personnel on an emergency basis to respond for missions that they needed to leave within 24 hours. So cumulatively, all of these actions have already happened because we've let this reach such a critical juncture.
Okay, well, I think we could probably talk all night about incorporation and all the questions that we have, because it's obviously a very important issue in Navarre, but we are a little over an hour, so I think we're going to close it out. Dr. Rudman, do you want to close it out? October 12th, I think, is the important date, everybody to remember.
Just to thank the members of the roundtable. I mean, we've had people that have driven great lengths through. Apparently, there's a hurricane out there, Mr. Mayor, but it's not coming our direction. So let's pray for those that are affected by this hurricane. I think last time I heard it was going to be kind of central Louisiana, something like that. So let's be sure and keep those people in our thoughts and prayers. We certainly know what that's like to have a bullseye on your back. But thank you, Mr. Mayor, for coming all the way from Desert. Thank you, Mr. City Manager, from what's the saying? Choose the view.
Choose the view.
If you're not going to choose Navarre, choose the view. Choose the view, everybody. Thank you, Andy D. Thank you for all you do for our community. We greatly appreciate having you here and all you do for the unincorporated community of Navarre. And Lieutenant Colonel Reynolds, thank you so much for your input and insight, and thank you so much for all you did getting us a veterans treatment court here in Santa Rosa County. I think we can trust your judgment, Lieutenant Colonel. So thank you for being a part of this roundtable. And to anyone watching on the live feed or to the members of the audience here, I'm always available if you have any questions or concerns. But the date to remember is October 12th. That will be the be-all and end-all. If you give me permission to move forward, we will move forward. If you tell me it's a non-starter, well, then it will be a non-starter for the rest of my tenure in Tallahassee. So please, I need to hear your voice, not through screaming and shouting, not through hate mails, not through threats. I need to hear your voice through a ballot initiative, and that straw vote will be again October 12th. I'm sure the Navarre. What's that?
Where?
I'm sure that information will be distributed through Navarre Press. I think one of the polling stations will be right here at Andy D's, but that information will be out there. For another polling location will be St. Sylvester's. There's even, I believe, a process in place. Am I correct to get an absentee ballot?
Yes, I have.
Oh, here we go.
Thank you. Vote at honestballot.com. You can request your ballots there. So I'll repeat that one more time. The word vote at honestballot.com. And
Are there 3 stations?
There's
there's
3.
one at Andy D's, and that is happening.
It wasn't a plug, I promise.
And he's got gluten
That was a plug.
That is a plug. We have to
8
know.
to 5, St. Sylvester's Church, 8 to 5, and there's a Central Navarre location. I did not write down the address because I wasn't sure exactly where that was. Do we have
Next
any
to
questions?
TC's, next to TC's front porch.
Next to CC's front porch,
Is it TC's front porch?
It's right next to it.
right next door.
What building?
There's an address, it's gonna be in the ad in next week's Navarre Press.
Okay, thank you so
Tune
much.
into the Navarre Press.
And we want to thank everyone that attended tonight and listening online.
Way over 4 minutes.
So thank you guys.